To talk more about solutions to the large amount of plastic in our oceans, I'm joined by Boyan Slat, a 23-year-old inventor from the Netherlands who shot to fame with his solution to plastic in the ocean. Joe Ruxton, co-founder of Plastic Oceans, a global non-profit organisation, and Peter Kershaw, chair of the UN Joint Group of Experts on the scientific aspects of marine environmental protection. Boyan, let me start with you, if I may. You have, as I say, achieved some fame with this invention of a solution to plastic in the ocean. Can you explain it relatively briefly to our listeners?
Sure, yeah. So plastic roughly concentrates in 5 areas in the world called ocean garbage patches, the largest one being between Hawaii and California, where basically the plastic doesn't go away by itself anymore. In the past, people proposed to clean that up with boats and nets, but this would take tens of thousands of years. So then several years ago, what the Ocean Cleanup proposed was to, instead of going after the plastic, we would let the plastic come to us by really using the natural ocean current in our advantage. So the system we invented is basically a very long U-shaped barrier that floats around in the ocean, driven by these natural ocean currents, first concentrating the debris before we actually take it out. And now we've been able to show that with a fleet of 60 of such cleanup systems, we can clean up half this Great Pacific Garbage Patch in 5 years' time. And the first system will actually be launched in a few months from now.
Joe Ruxton, this sounds like very good news. Puts Plastic Oceans out of business. It sounds as if a clean-up may well be possible.
I wish Plastic Oceans would be put out of business. I'd love to think that we can clean all of this up. I think what this has done has really drawn attention to the problem, and I think that's fantastic. But having spent time out in the centre of both the North Pacific and the North Atlantic, my concern is that by the time the plastic gets there, it's so small that you can't see it. And what you would see in our film, The Plastic Ocean, when I'm actually at the centre of the ocean, is you look out and the oceans look completely clear. There are occasional big bits floating out there, but it's been described very, very widely in the media as a giant floating island of trash, and that's simply not the case. It's not until you put a very fine mesh plankton net in there that you start to see the reality of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, and it's tiny, tiny pieces of plastic, and they're mixed up with plankton. And that, to me, is the problem, because if we do remove it all, we're going to take those little tiny creatures out as well, and we absolutely need them. They're heart of the food chain. Excuse me, the heart of the food chain, and also the phytoplankton provides more than half the oxygen we breathe.
Peter Kershaw from the UN, this is a classic tragedy of the commons problem, isn't it? Everybody feels that they can feel free to dump into the oceans. There has to be an answer, presumably some kind of taxation or behavioural change in the way that people live.
Yeah, I think this is just the latest example, a much more visible example of what humanity's been doing for centuries. We've been using the oceans as a convenient dumping ground for all our wastes. Plastics, because they're so durable and so visible when they're floating, just makes the problem much clearer. And I think there's general agreement that we do need better governance frameworks, and we do need better enforcement of existing regulations. My problem with the solution which Boyan has proposed, which is great for raising awareness, excuse me, is that it appears to provide a simple solution to what is a very, very complex problem. And I think we need to be much more imaginative about how we seek to reduce the amounts of plastics going into the ocean in the first place.
Boyan, can you see the concern that you come up with a miracle solution to the dumping of plastics in the ocean and the rest of the world goes, great, we can just keep on dumping?
Oh, sure, yeah. I mean, this will never be a replacement to prevention efforts. But let me respond to Joe first. When you look at the plastic problem, actually, we have done the most extensive survey of this ocean garbage patch by crossing it with 30 boats and an airplane at the same time. And what we see is that actually by count, indeed, most pieces of plastic are small pieces. But if you look at it from a mass perspective, so really the true amount of plastic, we see that over 95% of the plastic is actually large stuff, large enough to actually collect, and it doesn't go away by itself. And by cleaning those 95%, we also prevent those large objects from becoming those small microplastics. With regards to the bycatch issue, we've done an environmental impact assessment that says that that shouldn't be an issue. We just published a study showing that there is 180 times more naturally or more plastic than naturally occurring sea life in the area. So I don't think it's really it's not really a thing that we should not do. I think it's much more risky to not clean the ocean than to actually clean the ocean. I think it's a sort of a precautionary principle that can actually go one step too far.
Joe Ruxton, what do you make of that?
I actually think that we need to be concentrating on the source of it, because you can keep mopping up a flood as long as somebody's left the hose pipe turned on. And I think we need to actually look at where it's coming from in the first place, the river mouths and our coastlines, because 80% comes directly from the land, not wait for it to get into the centre of the ocean.
OK, I'm going to have to leave it there. I am very, very sorry. Boyan, Slat, Joe Ruxton, Peter Kershaw, thank you for joining us this afternoon. PM is at 5 o'clock. This is Jonny Dymond. That's The World at 1:45.